Our next speaker is Alison Gaylard, and she is talking on the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. So please join me with me and welcome Alison.
He's a very powerful man. We had trouble dealing with that. Now all of a sudden he's like falling apart.
That is a 7-week-old baby boy with whooping cough. His mum and I have met online through a whooping cough support group that we both belong to. She gave me permission to use this raw footage of him mid-episode. This young boy, thankfully, is now 3.5 years old and running his mum ragged. Tragically though, some of the other members in our group have lost their babies to whooping cough. I'm Alison Gaylard and I live in Mullumbimby, the Northern Rivers area of New South Wales, on the north coast. We have the unfortunate title of having the lowest vaccination rates in the whole of Australia. According to the World Health Organisation, our immunisation rates are lower than the developing nation of South Sudan. Go Mullum. I'm not about to quote you a ton of statistics and figures regarding vaccination. I'm not going to talk about the positives and benefits of vaccination either. There are many more cleverer and knowledgeable people to do that, some of which I can see sitting here today. I'm here for the real life stuff. In 2006, living in nearby Byron Bay, I gave birth to my first child. In the lead up, I discovered an element I hadn't encountered before, the anti-vaccination movement. When my daughter was a few weeks old, I had a random chance meeting via a friend in a cafe with a prolific anti-vaccination campaigner who lived near me and had arranged to meet this person to get advice on vaccination. I was horrified. I was horrified at the conversations I was having with pregnant women and new mothers. I became so concerned for the safety of my new baby that I barely left the house, for fear of her picking up a vaccine-preventable disease. All these parents were more frightened of the vaccine than the disease itself, and I just couldn't understand it. I could see the scaremongering going on, so why didn't they? I began then to realise where I had chosen to live was a pocket of dangerously low immunisation levels. Skipping forward a couple of years, we had moved to nearby Mullumbimby, and I was pregnant with child number 2. She was born 5 months after Dana McCaffrey had died, who succumbed to the evil disease that is pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough. Because of the prominent exposure in the media of Dana's death and a campaign to boost whooping cough awareness by her parents, I knew to get myself, my immediate family and surrogate grandparents of the girls boosted up to form a safe cocoon around my tiny, vulnerable newborn. Around this time, I became aware of people who were beginning to challenge this anti-vaccination organisation with the correct and factual information regarding vaccination and to hold those who fought against it accountable for their actions. This was the birth of Stop the AVN. I became a lurker on the Stop the AVN Facebook page, and for once since becoming a mother, I felt heartened to see and hear people who thought and felt like me, and it kept me sane. In early 2012, my beautiful, fully vaccinated daughters, you can see here, contracted whooping cough. With such low herd immunity, it really was inevitable. This photo was taken the week before they were diagnosed and became sick. I was devastated and frightened. It's horrible, this bit, talking about them. I had worked so hard to prevent them to becoming infected. We had managed through 2 large outbreaks and it was heartbreaking. Fortunately, because of their vaccination status, it was a lot milder than it could have been. At its worst, the coughing spasms were happening every 20 minutes, 24 hours a day, One child would finish and the other would start in tandem. I had to appear calm on the outside so as not to frighten them more than they were already, to tell them that they were going to be okay, whilst inside I was screaming for their lungs to let them take a much-needed breath. The three of us existed in my bed for nearly 3 weeks. I could keep them nearby and check on them 24 hours a day whilst mopping up the vomit and other bodily secretions being forced out of their frail bodies involuntarily due to the force of the cough. It was a horrific period that is hard to remember without emotion. After a few months, the girls were almost recovered. One night, I decided to stop being a lurker on the Stop the AVN page. I wrote a post about the experience we had just gone through. I wanted it to be seen by people who may have been sitting on the fence with regards to vaccination, to help them understand what whooping cough can be like, even whilst vaccinated, let alone how bad it could be without. 5 hours later, I then became the subject of a blog written by the prolific anti-vaccination campaigner I mentioned before. She had copied and pasted my post from the Stop the AVN page. I felt vilified as people were now commenting on this blog on how I had been hoodwinked into thinking that vaccines worked when they clearly don't, that vaccinated children are less healthy. I wasn't capable of thinking for myself, and even my breast milk obviously hadn't contained enough vitamin D. Yay. Stop the AVN became my lifeline from this experience. I received empathy and support from the members of this Facebook page. They probably stopped me from having a complete nervous breakdown. They opened up my world, sharing knowledge and facts, and helped me turn my distress and feelings of loneliness on a whole range of emotions into something positive. By chance, a polio survivor who also lived in my area and I met via Stop the AVN Facebook page. We then set about starting a local group on Facebook called the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. As a result of the group starting in May 2013, I was contacted by journalist Jane Hanson from the Daily Telegraph, who had instigated the No Jab, No Play campaign, a campaign to highlight the dangers of not vaccinating and quelling misinformation to their readership. Jane wanted to write about the Northern Rivers area as it had recently been highlighted in the media about how low the vaccine take-up was, and she had heard about our recently formed group. Our fledgling group was aiming to give people a forum to have confidence in speaking out about vaccination and feel comfortable amongst like-minded people, without the worry of a debate being started, which can often escalate into an argument that just goes round in circles with nothing being achieved. We grew quickly as a closed group on Facebook, with requests to join from local community members, GPs, mayors, other medical professionals and scientists. All wanted to make the Northern Rivers a safer place to live. We now have a core administrators group of 7 people, and Heidi, who is one, is here with me today. We have all in some way been affected by vaccine-preventable disease, either as a sufferer or through our professions. As we evolve, the time has come for us to raise our public profile. We have created our own website and an open Facebook page with a linked Twitter account, and these have been designed with the layperson in mind and those who may be hesitant about vaccinating. We feature stories of our members as well as facts and information. Some of our achievements we have made so far are lobbying local, state and federal government to support and back our request to have the free whooping cough booster reinstated for new parents and grandparents, particularly in the Northern Rivers area. And more recently, for women in their 3rd trimester of pregnancy, which the Queensland Health announced last week, I think. And we recently celebrated our 1st birthday, and joining us was the ABC Radio North Coast, who interviewed 3 of us at length about what it's like to be pro-vaccination and live in the Northern Rivers. As well as radio, we have been featured in local newspapers, the Northern Star and the Tweed Daily News. Heidi, Debbie and Kathy were all featured in the Courier Mail's Keep Our Kids Safe vaccination campaign. And Rachel and I have been asked for comments whenever the Daily Telegraph features a story on vaccination in our area. We have been able to link TV journalists to specific members in our group who are willing to talk to them, and the latest one being the 7:30 report in Queensland last week. Via our group's exposure, we now have TV and print media journalists contacting us instead of that anti-vaccination group. We have a policy in our group of not appearing alongside an anti-vaccination advocate and state up front that we will not be available for comment if we are to be portrayed as being on an equal standing to them. We have noticed a big shift in the way media now approaches stories on vaccination, and we believe it is partly due to grassroots community groups like Stop the AVN, and to a lesser extent us, who have been consistently bringing the issue of false balance to the media's attention. On the occasions that media have interviewed anti-vaccination spokespeople, we and other groups then get very vocal in our disappointment. Emails as well as social media like Facebook and especially Twitter have made this much easier. We avidly write letters to our local press to try to stamp out the false balance that can occur. Last month, I was lucky enough to represent NRVS and be accepted for a poster presentation at the National Immunisation Conference in Melbourne. I collaborated with Tracy McDermott, Rachel Dunlop, Anne Cody, Kate Ryan and David Hawkes. This conference was attended by eminent players in the world of immunisation and public health, and we were very well received and made excellent connections to show that our community really is not completely off the rails. A recent discovery by one of our members is that the birthing centre at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital has linked to the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network as a reliable resource for vaccine information. Sarah has taken this on board, and as a result there is now an investigation underway. Another fantastic opportunity is that Heidi, who's here with me today, has been invited by the North Coast Public Health Unit to be the community representative on what is called the Immunisation Task Force Committee. Heidi is used as a resource as to what can work and what doesn't when the public health are undertaking initiatives to raise immunisation levels. As well as this, Heidi has liaised with North Coast Medicare Local to get our posters, flyers and business cards distributed to over 70 GP clinics in our area. As you can see, they feature our website, and we are being used as a resource for GPs talking to hesitant parents. One of our main aims is to find out what works and what doesn't when talking with vaccine hesitant parents. Our demographic is pretty unique, to say the least. Previous research that has been carried out on this topic can't necessarily be applied in our area, and as a result, we have designed our own posters to address this issue. These are being shown to hesitant people via local immunisation nurses and birthing units as a method of finding out what sort of message needs to be out there. When we find out what communication methods may work or not work, we are looking to tackle local mums and bubs groups, pregnancy groups, high schools and other community groups with a calm and collected approach. No scaremongering. We know we cannot do anything about the hardened, rusted-on anti-vaxxers, and in fact we're not really interested in them at all. We want to talk to those who may be swaying in their decision and just ask why, and just start a conversation. And those conversations are finally starting to happen. Our future hopes are that we are more present in the community, and we want to start talking even to the local naturopaths and homeopaths. There are actually, believe it or not, some that are pro-vaccination. We're just trying to wheedle them out. And one of the things we hope to achieve is to follow Massachusetts in the US, who made a recent decision to make public vaccination take-up rates in schools in order for parents to make a more informed decision and to keep talking. We've grown a massive pair of bollocks this last year. This photo's tame compared to the one I was going to use. Amy will understand. Our favourite Cairo. What was once a nerve-wracking topic of conversation is now more palatable due to us all being supportive of each other and giving each other the confidence to talk out about vaccination. As opportunities arise, we will jump on them. We do this all completely unfunded. We fund ourselves. Printing was crowdsourced amongst our group members, and we dig in our own pockets all the time. And if this is being recorded, I'm sorry, Gary, my husband, shh, he's not supposed to know that bit. To get bigger campaigns happening, we would need funding, but at the moment we're happy to carry out our low-cost initiatives, and they actually seem to be working. It's hard to tell, and until a research agency decides to spend funding in our area, we may never know the results. If someone had said to me 18 months ago that I would be up to my neck in all things vaccination and become Gobby Gaylard, I would have laughed hard. But there you have it, and this is where we're at, and we're not going away. Thanks. No questions? Good. There's no questions, is there? Oh, they a whole host of things. The main thing I get brought up with me is the fact that, well, if your children are vaccinated, how did they get whooping cough? And then when you try and explain, well, there's no herd immunity, so there's no protection for anyone. And there's a whole heap of, reasons that anything you try to counter with, they can jump on you just like that. And that's why we don't engage hardened on anti-vaccination people. There's no point in me going up against another mum who lives near me who's anti-vaccination, who, I'm not going to say her name. And there's just no point because they're so far down the rabbit hole. They truly believe what they're spouting, and I'm just conscious that whenever I talk to anyone, I'm always thinking at the back of my mind that there's somebody who could be watching on, be it online or here, who is not completely sure about vaccinating their child. And yeah, I call it staying classy. Oh yeah, even though there was that recent paper, the meta-study a few weeks ago, yeah, it still causes autism apparently. But I want the people that are, that are genuine concerned folk to then, hear me say no. There's been no one that just says no, actually. So, not where I live anyway. Yes, sir.
The new group received its first cheque from Big Pharma.
And how big was it?
Actually, post's really slow round Mullen. You have to add on a couple of months, I think. No, I'm still waiting. Yeah, that apparently I do work for them. Yeah, as well as
Who
being
doesn't,
bitter
really?
and twisted. Yeah, and angry, I think, as well, aren't I? Yeah, something.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Alison.